Chapter 2: 100 Years of Good Cooperation. Just outside the hospital gates, Amy was stopping a car on the side of the road when a black car slowed to a stop in front of her. Immediately after, it was a man in black who got out of the car and said to her respectfully, "Miss Reed, our Mr. Hayden is here to see you." Amy didn't ask him who Mr. Hayden was, and the hospital entrance was not a place to talk, so she nodded slightly and bowed into the back seat. The car drove slowly towards Hayden's mansion, and the magnificent castle in front of her eyes made Amy marvel at it, even though she was not interested in it. Amy is led into the study where an old man with white hair is painting. She did not approach, nor did she make a sound, just stood quietly watching, trying to keep her presence to a minimum. Finally, when the old Hayden had put away his pen, he looked up at Amy. Her calves were already standing stiff, and she was holding herself up by a wave of perseverance. "Miss Reed, come and see how I look at this writing," the old Hayden waved towards Amy, calling her over. "Her two legs are going to fight the bend." The old Hayden silently looked at these in the eyes deep, but did not make a sound. Amy stood at the old Hayden's side, seeking a most respectful distance and posture. Her eyes fell on the painting. Amy pursed her lips, and the old Hayden's intentions became clear. She looked for the right moment to speak up and said, "The old Hayden's painting is very nice." The old Hayden sniffed. A touch of helplessness slipped through the eyes full of shine. This little girl did not really know how to draw, just pick the words that do not make mistakes to describe some. Sighing imperceptibly, the old Hayden asked, "So, do you like this painting?" Amy's eyes moved from the painting to the old Hayden's face, met his stern eyes, swallowed uncontrollably then, before nodding and saying, "I like it. Then I will give you this painting, and from now on, you are my Hayden family," the old Hayden said. Amy responded, "Thank the old Hayden. I'm not happy to be called that. I've told you that you're a member of my Hayden family, and you don't call me Grandpa?" The old Hayden pretended to be angry and said, "Eh." The old Hayden responded with pleasure, and it was audible that he was heartily pleased. "The party told you to stand so long, did not blame Grandpa, right?" The old Hayden said. "No." Me shook her head. In fact, she had long since lost track of it. "That's good," the old Hayden said instead of continuing the conversation. "Come with me to meet the old man." "Okay," Amy responded, hesitating for a moment, not going up to help the old Hayden after all, even though she saw that the old Hayden's left foot had a slightly limp. The old Hayden afterglow will Amy's hesitation to see a clear, again silent sigh. This is also a child who extremely defensive of people, touching their family's oldest, really, let people worry. The two men walked through the front yard to a courtyard in the deepest part of Hayden's mansion. As soon as Amy stepped in, she was delighted. The environment here is more serene, and the faint scent of flowers in the air gives her an extraordinarily peaceful feeling. In the center of the courtyard, there was a small fountain, bubbling with water, reminding her instantly of the mountain stream where she used to go to play with her teacher before she was 7 years old. Amy's eyes darkened. She so misses her teacher. As the old Hayden entered, the first thing Amy noticed was not the man lying on the couch, but the room full of sophisticated instruments, and she couldn't help but sigh. Their hospital's instruments are not so high-end, only the world's top instruments are here. Amy curled her fingers and felt an unbearable itch. She wanted to try these instruments if she understood them. They will be used in the hospital. Perhaps more difficult cases can be solved. "Pat, how are you feeling today?" The old Hayden had taken the lead and walked over to the bed, looking at his grandson lying on the bed, his voice shaking with restraint. Patrick Hayden lay flat on his back, staring blankly at the ceiling, his soul seemingly having long since left his body, unaware of the old Hayden's concerns. When Amy approached, she saw such a lifeless face. This is not the first time she has seen Patrick. The last time she saw him, she didn't have time to take a closer look at his features. At that time, he was covered in blood and had multiple burns all over his body. And she, together with her teacher and the most authoritative doctors from various departments of the hospital, aimed to bring him back to life with his life hanging by a thread. That surgery More than a dozen doctors took turns before and after, holding on for more than 40 hours, which is considered to be the person to save back. Amy participated in the first half of the journey, so she had no idea that such a wretched man had such a good-looking face. Patrick has a pair of eyes that are as blue as the deep sea, and there is a small mole at the end of the eyes, and at this moment, because of the long illness, the already fair complexion is not much blood. But still let Amy think that this man is the most beautiful and amazing man in the world. She couldn't help but look away. Perhaps sensing the unfamiliar gaze, Patrick's eyes twisted and met Amy's with precision. All of a sudden, the original ripple-free pupils surged with a touch of anger, mixed with the disappointment predetermined speechless. Patrick moved his eyes away and looked at the old Hayden, and said, "Grandpa, just give up. How many doctors have already sentenced me to death? Stop clinging." The old Hayden heard him say this, originally happy to see his granddaughter-in-law's energy. This moment was beaten to pieces. He patiently persuaded, "Pat, Grandpa, please, don't say such words. As long as there is a little hope, Grandpa will not give up. You don't give up on yourself, okay?" Patrick averted his eyes, not wanting to see the worried and helpless eyes of the old man. "Since his accident, I have seen my grandfather look 10 years older again. This 6 months, day and night for him to run around, heavily seeking medical treatment, even the black market, dark web on the information, he did not let go. Patrick has seen it all. But the more this happens, the less hope he has for a cure. If he were not unable to move himself, he would really want to end himself, so that this old man, who is already too old, can go and live his old age in peace and stop worrying about him." The old Hayden saw that Patrick had closed himself off again, so he knew what he was thinking. He quickly gathered his emotions and said to Patrick, "Pat, don't think too much. I'm not bringing a doctor here to see you this time. Double quotes. That. Patrick now moves his eyes back. He looked to the old Hayden with suspicious eyes. Now, could there be anything that would make the old Hayden happier than to get him a doctor? The old Hayden introduced, "Pat, this is Amy, the Reed family's third girl. Grandpa made the decision to give you a marriage. From now on, she is your wife." The tone fell. I saw Patrick's face floating a touch of mockery, the anger under the eyes even more. He didn't look at Amy, but said in a cold voice, "Grandpa, I don't need it. He is already such a ruined man. What qualifications does he have to have a wife?" "Pat, Grandpa just want to find someone to take care of you. The head of the family are a group of men. Take care of you is not detailed enough. You will feel sorry for Grandpa, okay?" the old Hayden said. His tone was extraordinarily humble, and Amy couldn't help but feel her heart sink as she listened. Mason will also have such a loving look, only that the objects is never her. Amy would love to say something to Patrick, like, "She's actually a doctor and she can take care of him professionally, as long as he agrees to the old Hayden's arrangement." Although, it's just that she couldn't see the old Hayden so sad. But she could see that Patrick had a fierce resistance to doctors, and the old Hayden, when introducing her, did not introduce what she did, so intent, she could understand. After some thought, Amy said, "Master Patrick, you don't have to think of me as your wife, just think of me as the Hayden family's new maid, as long as you don't get mad at me when you see me." Amy still has to fight for herself. She is full of desire to explore the various sophisticated instruments in this room, which makes her have to talk to Patrick in advance. Otherwise, in the future she often come to his room wandering around. The instrument did not study on. By this man angry. Scolding is very likely. She doesn't want to spend a lot of her energy on these things. Patrick looked Amy up and down for a while and was tempted to be sarcastic. The Reed family could not continue their business, or they were about to go bankrupt, and they actually wanted the Reed family's delicate young lady to marry him, an invalid, and now, in order to stay, they were willing to become the Hayden family's subordinates. However, when he saw Amy's clear eyes, he only pursed his lips and did not make a sound. When the old Hayden saw this, he took it as a yes from Patrick. He inclined his head gratefully, glanced at Amy. The more he felt, gave the girl aggravation. Right now, he was afraid Patrick would back out and immediately said, Then it's decided, Pat, I'll let Amy stay in later. Patrick did not make a sound, which is the best response. From Patrick's room, until back in the front yard, the old Hayden said, Amy, thank you, you are willing to take care of Pat, willing to marry him. Grandpa really very pleased. Amy grunted, a flash of guilt welling up in her heart. She couldn't tell the old man what she was willing for. The old Hayden said to herself, don't worry, in the future, you are Hayden, with Grandpa in, no one can bully you, and when Pat gets better, he will protect you. Amy nodded her head and said gratefully, thank you, Grandpa. This feeling of being taken under the wing and treated like family is so good. She had some craving for such warmth. But Amy, as you can see, Pat is very repulsed by doctors. You work, for the time being. Do not tell Pat, the old Hayden said. Amy said, Grandpa, I understand. I won't tell him. That's good. The old Hayden was relieved, patted Amy's hand, and suddenly said, Amy, I've got my eye on you and Pat. He lived to this age, a lot of things, see clearly. Ever since Patrick became bedridden, he has had some patience with him, everyone else, so to speak, he has been irritable. But just now, he clearly did not want to pay attention to Amy, but did not say hard words to embarrass her. Based on this alone, the old Hayden couldn't help but think that perhaps Amy was the one person who could change Pat's mind. Therefore, he looked at Amy's gaze. There is a little more deep meaning.